Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Puja Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. The attachment that we have to the roles that we play, the way that we would like the world to see us, the way that we would like the world to respond to us, to act toward us, and the way the world actually does. This is the source of so much misery in the world. If you stop 10, 20 random people on the street, people with food to eat, with a roof over their heads, with education, people without any actual logistic cause for suffering or fear, anxiety. You stop them and you say, "How are you today? Ma'am, sir, bhai sahab, uncle ji, didi," whatever you call them. How are you today? In most cases, people are stressed. And if you ask them the source of their stress, it almost always boils down to someone, some group of someones not responding the way they'd like them to, not treating them the way that they would like them to, not acting, not speaking the way that they would like them to. It's the ego that causes so much suffering. And this is where, on a spiritual path, we emphasize so much over and over to become free of the ego. It kills us. It's the ego that says, "How dare you speak to me like that?" It's the ego that says, "Who do you think you are?" It's the ego that says, "Don't you know who I am?" It's the ego that says, "I should be treated like this, spoken to like that." It's the ego that is so attached to all of the individual actions, words, behaviors, responses that we get from the world. And of course, the dilemma is we have no control over the world. So we've attached our happiness, our peace, our well-being in something that A, is constantly changing. The way people speak to us, treat us, is dependent not on us, it's dependent on them. We take it personally, but it actually all has to do with them. It has to do with what mood they're in at the moment. It has to do with what light or darkness they are in, with what happened to them 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour ago, 30 years ago that's triggering them in this moment. It's never about us, it's always about them. But we get caught up. So how people treat us, how they act, how they respond, it constantly changes, number one. And number two, we have no control over it at all. but we've hooked our happiness in it. And this is where we suffer. So the best way to deal with the ego is to acknowledge it, recognize it exists. I always say, do not say in your mind, I'm going to get rid of my ego. I'm going to annihilate my ego. I'm going to fight my ego. And the reason you don't want to say that to yourself is when you say that in your mind, your ego hears it. Your ego is sitting there in your mind listening to you say, I'm going to annihilate the ego. There's no place you can whisper that the ego won't hear you. So what happens when you do that? Then the ego thinks, all right, annihilate me, right? And the ego is very cunning, very clever, and of course very attached to its own survival, like anything. Even a little ant, a little mosquito is very attached to its own survival. So when the ego hears you saying that, it starts to play even more games. It starts to come to you as a certain voice in a certain way, a certain inner instinct that you think just might be the voice of God, just might be your inner voice. And it's just the ego playing dress up, so it's not annihilated. So don't say that. Instead, see the ego, recognize it. I see you, I bow to you, I understand where you are coming from. And I'm not going to give you the reins of this show. You don't get to control how I feel, how I think, how I speak. You can exist. I'm not going to annihilate you. But you can't control things. The dilemma comes when we become slaves to the ego. The ego is that's like, oh, you insulted me, so I'll insult you. I'll show you. I'll one-up you. You hit me, I'll hit you. You're mean to me, I'll be mean to you. That's where the ego gets us in trouble. Or the ego feels threatened, feels hurt. So it engages in its drama with the world around it. And then what you find when you look back on the hours and the days of your life is how much of them were wasted. Wasted in ego battles of wills with people in so many cases that you don't even care about. I mean, here in this question, we're talking about people waiting in a waiting room. Nameless people. People whose faces you probably couldn't even pick out of a lineup 3 hours later. But what they think of you, how they identify you, causes you suffering. And this is true as we drive down the freeway, as we shop for groceries, as we move through our career world and our offices and companies with colleagues, with community people. People about whom we don't even care. What they think of us, how they treat us, how they speak to us, has such a power to cause such suffering. And then, of course, you bring it into our loved ones, and it's even 100 times worse because they are people we care about. And this is where what's most important is we see the ego, we understand it exists, but we just pull away its power. Pull away its ability to hold the reins of this chariot. And we expand. We expand our sense of self. So when you're in the grip of an ego battle, your inner self feels like it's about this big, tiny. And it feels very squished, and it feels suffocated, and it feels like it's in this vice death grip of the ego around that particular drama situation. But if you can expand, expand the awareness of self. Breathe. Let go. Recognize the connection to all. Then, yeah, the ego exists. It exists over there. But in the ocean, so many things exist. Right? The ocean itself. Beautiful, beautiful fish swimming in the ocean. In one part of the ocean, aren't worried that in the other part of the ocean there's sharks. Swimming in one part of the ocean, not worried that there's high tide in another part of the ocean. As long as it's low tide where I am, we're good. Yeah, high tide, it's over there. Yeah, the tsunami, it's happening over there. So if we can expand that awareness, expand that consciousness so that the ego is still entitled to exist. It's the metaphoric shark over there or high tide over there. But it's not impacting us over here. Because my decisions, my thoughts, my feelings, my attention, my focus is over here. And if over there the ego's playing its own drama games, okay, so be it. Right? It's like a puppy playing in the corner. As long as it's not jumping on you, it's okay. So that's how you deal with the ego. And then slowly, you'll find it dissipates. At least its impact on you will dissipate. And its presence can be there, as long as it's not in control of things.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. Becoming a sadhvi, as the questioner says, it's a choice that we make, whether we are male and we take vows of Sanyas and become sadhu or swami. We're female, we take vows, we become sadhvi. It's a choice that we make in line with what we know is our dharma, to commit ourselves to this life of renunciation for spirituality, of renunciation for being one with the divine, of renunciation of all else, to be able to immerse ourselves fully in that spiritual practice, in that spiritual path. It's not something that one gets taught to do. There are so many beautiful, beautiful spiritual teachers all over India, all over the world for that matter, who can can help you find within yourself that experience of the truth of who you are, that experience of oneness with the divine, oneness with fullness, wholeness, completeness, oneness with love, because that is the core of who we are. That truth of who we are is love, is boundlessness, is infinity. But the choice of a path of renunciation is a decision that has to come from within. It's a choice that you will know within, this is my dharma, this is my path. Things of the world don't hold that pull on me, that appeal for me, or not nearly as much as just immersing myself fully in a life dedicated to God. But what I would say is before you jump into that, because there's no need to jump into that, in order to live a spiritual life, in order to live a life that is expanded and true and full and the embodiment of spirituality, there's nothing that says that thou must renounce everything, or that you can't be in a family or have a job or be in the world. In fact, our scriptures are full of stories, the vast majority actually of the beings in our scriptures and all of the sacred epics and sacred stories actually are householders. There's many more of them than there are sannyasis. Even the sages and the rishis, in most cases, were householders. And that's important because there's nowhere that God says, you must renounce the world in order to be close to me. There are some of us for whom we know that's our dharma. And it's a very, very special dharma that feels to me as it was something that was given to me. But what's most important, which Lord Krishna emphasizes in the Bhagavad Gita, is you must fulfill your dharma. And it is much better, even Arjuna says, I'm going to die on this battlefield. And Lord Krishna says, maybe. Now, of course, he's God. He knew what was going to happen. We have to wait to read our first time through the Mahabharata to actually know what happens. But Bhagwan Krishna's God, he knows what's going to happen. But he doesn't say to Arjuna, don't worry. Don't worry, you're going to win this thing. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. Because what he says to him instead is, it is much better to die on this battlefield in the fulfillment of your dharma than to run away and not fulfill your dharma. Or to try to fulfill someone else's dharma. Because Arjuna, of course, says, I'm just going to go to the cave, I'm going to meditate. I'll become a sadhu. And Lord Krishna says, that is not your dharma. So if you feel, our divine sister who's asked the question, if you feel that this is your dharma, to become a sadhvi, wonderful. Wonderful. You are more than welcome. Come. But you should know, you who have asked the question and the collective you who are watching, that there's no rule that this must be a choice you make. The question for you is, how can I, in my dharma, become the closest to God? Because, by the way, saffron cloves, in and of themselves, don't bring you closer to God. In and of themselves, they don't grant you enlightenment or awakening or freedom from ego or freedom from ignorance. They're just kapura. It's kapura of a very special color. The color has a very special significance. But the significance is only special when we take it into our hearts and live our lives like that. And dedicate ourselves like that. So the most important question is, how can you in your life get closer and closer to God? When I first came here, and I told Puja Swamiji that I felt so blessed by all of the incredible blessings I'd been given, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to give back. I wanted to be of service. He didn't say to me, take sannyas. He didn't say to me, renounce the world. In fact, it took me 4 years of begging him to get him to even let me take sannyas, to get him to let me officially become a sadhvi. But what he told me was that he wanted 3 things from me. He wanted me, number 1, to serve the world. He said, you've been given so much. Use every minute, every moment, every ability you have, every opportunity you have to serve. And he said, number 2, get closer and closer to God every day. Every single day when you go to sleep, you should be closer to God than you were when you woke up. And he said, number 3, be happy. He said, any pain you have, any sadness you have, any grief, whatever you have, he said, just give it to me and I'll give it to Ganga. So these are the instructions of the Guru. Not renounce the world, leave everything, take off those clothes and wear saffron. But get closer to God. Serve the world. And be happy. Be happy means what? It means let go. It means let go of the nonsense, of the garbage that's polluting your mind, that's keeping you from living in happiness. It wasn't, here's a cookie, be happy for the next 5 minutes. It was, be happy all the time. And in order to be happy all the time, cookies aren't enough. You have to actually be able to let go of the garbage, of the nonsense that holds us back. So those are the instructions. I'd say start there. It's a very beautiful place to start. It's where I started. And by the way, even having taken sannyas, even having renounced all of that which we renounce in our vows, those 3 things are still what I anchor myself in every day. The celibacy, the renunciation, that comes naturally. That's actually much easier. Renouncing attachments, renouncing sensual pleasures, it's actually much easier than renouncing the stuff that keeps you from being happy. That ego, the grudges, the pain, the desires, the fears. That's the stuff that's much harder to renounce. So start there. And then if you still feel deeply that this is your path, by all means come. And even if you've decided that renunciation may not be your path, but you just want to come and get deeper and deeper on your spiritual path, still come. This is the sacred land. Whatever your spiritual dharma may be, as Puja Swamiji says, welcome home. So come.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. From Sanyas to sex, between question 1 and question 2. This is the joy of Satsang, of that truth that's really all-encompassing. And as we always say, whatever it is that's in your mind and heart, you know, when we have a garden full of people, I usually begin by saying there's no wrong question. There's no silly question or stupid question, as long as it's something that's really holding you back inside, that's in your mind, in your heart. So, is sex something that makes us lose our spiritual merits? Is it something that is harmful on a spiritual path? It depends. In and of itself, no. In fact, as we know from our numerous beautiful sutras that have been given to us, we have sutras of yoga, we have sutras of how to live various aspects, every aspect actually of our lives. The sutras are that tell us how to live every aspect of our life in a way that is bringing us closer and closer to God. And of course we have the Kama Sutra of, okay, so you are going to engage in sex, how to do it in a way that it becomes something that brings you farther on the path rather than something that takes you away. Let's talk first about the situations in which sex does take us off the path. Situations in which it absolutely does undo whatever spiritual merits we have. Those situations are, number 1, when it is against a vow you've taken. So for example, if you are a renunciant, since we were just talking about sannyas, if you are a renunciant, then obviously sex is violating your vow. It is something that's going to take you off of the path, is going to diminish your spiritual merits, is going to cause you to accrue negative karmic fruits. But also, we have the vow of marriage. And if you've taken a vow of marriage to one man or one woman, engaging in sex with a different man or woman is also something that pulls you off of the spiritual path. It's something that takes you farther from that divine connection. It's something that pulls those spiritual merits away and brings that bitter karmic fruit. Even, by the way, if nobody ever finds out. Karmic fruits are not those only given to us when people find out. The law of karma is there everywhere. It's not ki kisi ko nahi pata lagaya to koi baat nahi. Bhagwan to malum hai. God knows, the law of karma knows, and it pulls you away. So number one, if it's against a vow. Number two, if it's only something for the body. We are not animals. We are put here on earth with the incredible ability, and the reason that the human birth is said to be the highest creation is because we actually have the ability to be conscious of ourselves, to actually watch ourselves, look at ourselves, have that witness, have that awareness, have that consciousness. If it were just about eating food, having sex, and protecting ourselves, well, that's what animals do. They eat, they sleep, they procreate, and they fight off anybody or any other animals who might be trying to harm them or their family. What is it that makes us different? The ability not to do things based just on the body. And by the way, this isn't just about sex. It's also about food. We have the ability not to eat something that we don't want to eat. If we are vegetarians and we're feeling hungry, and the first place we drive by is a McDonald's, we're not going to go in and get a hamburger just because bhook lag rahe. We understand, I don't eat meat. I'll be hungry for a little bit longer until I find some place where I can get vegetarian food. We understand, yes, there is an urge in the body. There is a rush of chemicals in the body that is telling me eat, eat, eat. But I have my buddhi. I have my shakti. I have my shuddhi, my intellect, my power, my purity, to be able to say no. And the same is true for sex. So if sex is just for the body, if it's just what we call lust, that doesn't make it evil, by the way. We're not talking about good or bad. Remember that the question was about that which takes us off our spiritual path or closer on our path. And engaging in behaviors that are just about the body sends a message in our mind that says you are the body. You are only these chemicals in your brain and in your body saying, I've got to have it, I've got to have it. But you're not the body. You're the soul. And so if that sex is just about the body, if it's just about physical enjoyment and release, chances are afterwards, you're not going to feel closer to God. You're going to feel relieved in a very physical way. The same way that you may if you're hungry and you eat something. You have to go to the bathroom really badly, you finally go. Right? There's a sense of physical relief. But you don't feel closer to God. And especially if you're on a path and you've made a commitment to be anchored on that path, the last thing you want to do is engage in behaviors that are going to make you feel guilty, or that you've gone astray, or that you've just become hormones and sensory neurons. So those are the two main ways that it would pull you directly off the path. But if you are engaged in a beautiful relationship, and it's a relationship in which you're moving closer to God together, because that is possible. When couples get married, Puja Swamiji always gives them the blessing. May you move together, hand in hand, closer and closer to God realization. Now, of course, they've just gotten married. They haven't taken sannyas. They're not going to be celibate. But what it means is everything you do together, let that be a way of moving closer to God. Whether you're sitting together and meditating, whether you're praying, whether you're engaged in seva, or whether you're engaged in the beautiful enjoyment of the senses when they merge in love. Either way, make sure that it's something that brings you closer and closer to God. And if it's in a relationship committed to God, committed to expansion, committed to depth, and if that coming together is part of that same practice, then absolutely there are beautiful ways of coming together in that physical way that are committed to God. There's a whole science of Tantra committed to how do we take aspects of the body and use them in a way to get closer to God. But remember, not to get lost in them. And this is the final, but perhaps the most important point. Even when it is something that you're using to get closer to God, even when it's part of what we would refer to as Tantra, ultimately the goal is to be free of it. Ultimately the goal, even in married couples, is that you move, right? We talk about the ashrams of life. We begin in our brahmacharya ashram phase, the first 25 years of our life. We're students, we study, or 20 years. We're students, we study, committed to learning. Then the next 20 or 25 years, depending on whether you think your life expectancy is 80 or 100, but either way, the second fourth of your life is that householder phase, that grihast ashram phase, where you're using your householder life to get closer to God. You're using your marriage, your childbearing, your job to get closer to God, to get closer to the spiritual practice. But then we move into the vanprastha ashram phase, where we start to pull away. Even if we've been married, we've been parents, we've been professionals, we start to pull away. And then ultimately the sannyas ashram phase, as that final phase of life, regardless of what the earlier stages have been. So even if you are engaging in sex as a beautiful way, whether for procreation, because that's also beautiful, or as a beautiful way to get closer to God through another being, recognize ultimately that the point, eventually, is to move beyond it as well, and to move into that vanprastha and then sannyas ashram phase of life.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. So, spiritually, we have to stop thinking in terms of silos and boxes. To say, how is it possible that one day I'm full of love and devotion to God, to my guru, and another day I'm full of anger? It's like saying as though somehow those two things were mutually exclusive. They're not. As long as there is karma, karmic fruit that's not dealt with yet, as long as there are patterns in the mind, patterns in the brain, sanskaras, that we don't have consciousness with yet, they're going to keep playing themselves. The anger is an unconscious programming. We get angry when the universe is not doing what we want. But it's an unconscious way of getting angry, meaning if I say to you right now, okay, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to be as full of anger as you possibly can. Okay? 1, 2, 3, go. Now, I don't have the benefit of a garden full of people whose hands I can see. So I can't say to you, okay, raise your hand if you could do it. But I know, even connecting with all of you through this camera, that you can't. Now, you can think of things that make you angry, of course. You can think of things you'd like to change, of course. But that face red, palms sweaty, heart racing, tunnel visioned anger, you can't do it. Because you can't do it consciously. You cannot consciously lose yourself the way that we lose ourselves in anger. So love for God, love for my guru, love for anyone, when it's pure, requires me to be present. It requires me to be conscious. It requires me to be here now, in this moment, in this breath, in the perfection of this instance, right here. Only right here, right now, can I deeply feel love. Anger requires the opposite. It requires me to be wrapped up in my head. Another time, another place, another pattern, another expectation, another unfulfilled desire, another illusion. And so the fact that both of those can coexist in the same person is actually really, really normal, really common. By God's grace, we don't have to reach a state of total enlightenment before we're able to experience deep love for God. Thankfully. Thankfully, because at least along the way to enlightenment, we're able to have that extraordinarily divine experience of being one with God, of connecting with God, of loving the universe. When we're conscious. And then we still slip into moments of unconsciousness, moments of that autopilot, subconscious patterns from another lifetime or earlier in this lifetime karmic package stuff. And we react in anger. So they're not mutually exclusive at all. But be very thankful for the experiences of love for God, of love for the Guru that you've had, because when you have moments of anger then, as soon as you can grab hold of some kind of consciousness, say to yourself, do I want to walk this path? I have a choice. I have an alternative. There are people who haven't had that divine experience, and so who don't know they have an alternative. They also have one, of course, but they're not conscious of it. They think this is the only way to be. But you are blessed enough to know that you have an alternative. That this same being, this same bunch of cells has the ability to be drenched in divine love. And so why choose anger? Choose love instead. So the minute that anger comes up, the minute that you're aware of it, because sometimes it takes a few moments for our conscious mind to kind of kick in. The moment that your conscious mind kicks in, say, wait. I got on the wrong bus. Let me off. Get on the right one. Slowly, you will change that habit of reacting unconsciously in anger.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. So this is actually one of the reasons we do puja. Puja means our worship ceremonies. When we offer flowers and water, fire, incense to the divine. We don't do puja for God. Sometimes people think I'm offering puja to God, like somehow God needs our water or needs our rice or needs our flowers. God doesn't. We do puja because we need to be reminded to spend time with God. And so if you sit down to do puja and your mind wanders, just focus more on the puja. There's mantras you can be chanting, you should be chanting. As you're offering, focus on what you're offering. You're offering the water. You're offering the flowers. Realize this is Mother Earth you're offering. As you offer, really feel what you're offering, but also know that all those elements, the fire, the water, the earth, the air, the ether, these are the same 5 elements that your body is made up of. And so you are offering yourself to God through these elements. So if the mind wanders, just bring it back to the mantra, whatever mantra is being chanted. Come back to the mantra. If you do puja with a priest and the priest is chanting, chant along with the priest. If you're doing puja and you're chanting the mantras, chant them with more love. Chant them out loud. Sometimes if we just do it in our mind, it's very easy to kind of let it run on autopilot while our mind also wanders. Speak them out loud. Speak them loudly. Sing them. Try to sing them in the most beautiful tone, like proper Vedic mantras. Hold your image of the divine, whichever divine manifestation you're offering to, hold that image in your mind. And whatever random thoughts are coming, offer those also to God. Oh God, here's my offering of fire, here's my offering of water, here's my offering of my thoughts of jealousy, here's my offering of my monkey mind, here's my offering of being stuck in yesterday and anxious about tomorrow, here's another flower, here's another thought of jealousy, here's some more water, here's my anger. Just offer it all, whatever comes. Offer it. And that'll keep your mind engaged. It'll also make your puja much deeper and much more real and much more beneficial for you and your connection to God.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.